In the year 1095, Europe was not powerful, it was not wealthy, and it was not organized. Political power was fragmented. Kings ruled weakly. Nobles owned land but lacked liquid money. There were no national treasuries, no standing armies, no centralized taxation systems capable of funding long-distance war. Wealth existed almost entirely as land. You could command peasants, you could extract food, but you could not easily mobilize cash. And without cash, war beyond your borders was almost impossible. Yet within just a few years, tens of thousands of people would march thousands of miles to the eastern Mediterranean. They would require weapons, armor, horses, ships, food, and years of logistical support. By any rational economic standard, this war should never have happened. Subscribe to Wealthime Archive. In November 1095, Pope Urban II stood before a crowd at the Council of Clermont. His message was spiritual: reclaim Jerusalem, defend Christendom, secure salvation. But beneath the theology was something else, a redirection of Europe's surplus violence outward. Urban was not selling a war to kings, he was selling legitimacy to individuals. The audience was filled with knights, violent by profession, condemned by the church, and trapped in a shrinking social role. Second sons with no inheritance, landholders with honor but no future, men whose identity depended on violence. For them, the crusade was not just faith, it was social survival. Once powerful nobles took the cross, participation became contagious. To go was to prove loyalty and piety. To stay behind was to invite suspicion and shame. Faith opened the door. Honor culture pushed people through it. And they didn't go alone. Crusading armies were not professional forces. They were moving societies. Knights brought servants, craftsmen, clergy, laborers, families. Europe didn't just export soldiers, it exported instability. The First Crusade involved up to 100,000 people. For individual knights, participation cost years of income. There were no state salaries, no war bonds, no government treasuries. Crusaders had to finance themselves. So they liquidated. Land was sold cheaply. Estates were mortgaged to monasteries. Debts were taken from moneylenders. Future harvests were pledged. What mattered was not long-term solvency. It was immediate liquidity. Salvation was urgent. Debt could wait. This was the turning point. War stopped being something you simply fought. It became something you financed. And once war becomes a financial operation, intermediaries appear. Italian merchant republics, Venice, Genoa, Pisa, recognized the opportunity immediately. Crusaders needed ships, transport, supplies, warehousing, credit, insurance. These cities did not crusade for faith, they sold services. By the early 11th century, crusading routes had become trade routes. Ports grew rich, shipyards expanded, contracts replaced vows. Religion mobilized men. The medieval church was not just spiritual, it was administrative, transnational, and deeply political. But it lacked a standing tax system. The Crusades changed that. New taxes were authorized, clergy were taxed, lay people were taxed. People could pay instead of fighting. Indulgences were monetized. Belief became leverage. What began as emergency fundraising hardened into recurring revenue. Military orders emerged to protect pilgrims. But the Knights Templar evolved into something else. They accepted deposits, transferred funds across borders, issued letters of credit. Pilgrims could travel without carrying cash. By the early 12th century, the Templars operated one of Europe's most advanced financial networks. They wore armor, but they thought like bankers. The illusion shattered in the Fourth Crusade. Crusaders hired Venice for transport. They couldn't pay, so Venice redirected the army, first to Zara, then to Constantinople, a Christian city, sacked by Crusaders. The result: Byzantium was devastated. Venice became enormously wealthy. The crusade hadn't failed. From this point on, crusades no longer needed victory, they needed continuation. Merchants profited regardless of outcome. Institutions absorbed risk upward. Losses fell on individuals. War became asymmetric. Losses were personal. Profits were institutional. Peasants paid higher taxes. Noble families collapsed under debt. Jewish communities were scapegoated and persecuted. Land consolidated upward. Power shifted from warriors to institutions that understood finance. Europe didn't modernize by accident. It was forged through debt and conflict. By the late 13th century, belief faded. Jerusalem was lost. Public enthusiasm collapsed. The Crusades failed militarily, but the financial machinery survived. Taxes remained. War finance evolved. Merchant empires expanded. Once a society learns how to finance power, it never forgets. The Crusades didn't just change Europe's borders, they changed how power is funded. Belief opens wallets, institutions extract value, and systems learn to survive long after the mission fades. That lesson didn't die in the Middle Ages. It's still shaping the modern world. And in the next video, you'll see how the same machinery operates today, without crosses, but with contracts. Subscribe to Wealthime Archive. History has the answers. I'll show you where to look.